At 6:47 a.m. on September 23, 1944, Hauptmann Klaus Zimmermann stepped out of his staff car in the village of Uberken, 12 kilometers south of the Belgian border in northern France. The 34-year-old company commander had survived 3 years on the Eastern Front. He'd walked through Stalingrad, fought at Kursk, earned the Iron Cross First Class. He checked his watch, adjusted his cap, and began walking toward the farmhouse commandeered as his battalion headquarters. He never saw the Hayloft 340 meters away, never heard the shot. The 7.5 millimeters round entered his skull just above his right eye. Zimmermann was dead before his body hit the cobblestones. The German soldiers rushing to his body found no blood trail, no muzzle flash location, no sign of the shooter, just their commander lying in the morning light, killed by a ghost. That ghost was 62-year-old Henri Beaumont, a French dairy farmer who'd been shooting Germans from his hayloft for 11 weeks. Before we continue with this extraordinary story, if you're finding value in these untold chapters of resistance, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment, letting us know where you're watching from. Whether it's Paris, Pennsylvania, or anywhere in between, your support keeps these forgotten stories alive. Henri Beaumont had never killed anyone before July 1944. He'd never served in the military, never fired a shot in anger. He was a farmer who grew hay, raised dairy cows, and minded his own business in the village of Maris, population 437, in the flat agricultural region of French Flanders. But on July 7, 1944, for weeks after D-Day, a German patrol executed his son. Pierre Beaumont was 19 years old. He'd been hiding weapons to the resistance, nothing sophisticated. Just 3 British Sten guns and ammunition dropped by parachute and stored in the false bottom of a grain bin. Someone informed. The Gestapo came at dawn. They searched the farm for 3 hours. Found the weapons. Pierre tried to run. An SS corporal shot him in the back at 40 meters. Left him bleeding in the barnyard while they arrested Henri and his wife, Marie. The Germans held them for 6 days in Armentières. Interrogated Henri repeatedly. Beat him. Threatened to shoot Marie. Henri said nothing. He genuinely knew nothing about the weapons. Pierre had hidden them without telling his parents. The resistance cell operating in the area had used Pierre as a courier without the family's knowledge. On July 13th, the Germans released Henri and Marie. Insufficient evidence against them. Pierre was already buried. The parish priest had held a small funeral service. 14 people attended. No one spoke afterward. Speaking attracted attention. Attention brought the Gestapo. Henri returned to his farm and found it occupied. A German supply unit had requisitioned his barn for vehicle maintenance. His fields were being used to park trucks. His house was off limits, reserved for officers passing through on their way to reinforce the Normandy front. The Germans left him the hayloft above the cattle barn, 20 meters long, 8 meters wide, accessed by an exterior ladder. The loft was full of hay bales from the previous summer's cutting. The Germans didn't need it. Hay was useless to a mechanized army. Henri moved into the loft. Marie stayed with her sister in the village. The Germans told Henri he could use the loft for storage and sleep there if needed, but he was forbidden to interfere with German operations. If he caused problems, they'd shoot him. Henri spent 3 days in the loft doing nothing, just sitting, thinking. His son was dead. Germans walked around his property like they owned it. They laughed. They smoked. They worked on their vehicles. The corporal who shot Pierre was still there, working as a mechanic in Henri's barn. On July 16th, Henri made a decision that violated every survival instinct he possessed. The rifle came from his neighbor, Claude Mercier. Claude was 68, too old for the resistance, but he'd hidden his hunting rifle when the Germans ordered all civilians to surrender firearms in 1940. The rifle was a Lebel Model 1886, a bolt-action rifle-firing 8mm rounds. It had belonged to Claude's father, who'd carried it in the First World War. Claude gave Henri the rifle without questions. Also gave him 47 rounds of ammunition, all he had. Henri carried the rifle to his loft hidden in a burlap sack filled with potatoes. The German sentries didn't search him. Old farmer with potatoes for storage. Nothing suspicious. Henri hadn't fired a rifle since 1919. He'd been 17, learning to hunt rabbits with his uncle. Hadn't liked it. The killing bothered him. He'd gone back to farming. Now, he was 62 and planning to kill Germans. The Hayloft provided a perfect hide position. The building sat on the eastern edge of Henry's property, elevated slightly on a natural rise in terrain. From the loft window facing west, Henri could see 800 meters of road, the village square, 3 farmhouses used by German units, and the main crossroad where military traffic passed constantly. The loft's position was ideal for several reasons. First, the hay bales provided concealment. Henri could position himself behind stacked bales with only the rifle barrel protruding through a small gap. Second, the elevation gave him a height advantage of approximately 6 meters above ground level, improving his sight lines. Third, the loft was a known civilian structure. The Germans expected farmers to use haylofts. It didn't draw attention, but the real advantage was distance. The loft was far enough from German positions that muzzle flash would be difficult to spot in daylight. Sound was harder to pinpoint across open fields. By the time Germans responded to a shot, Henri could hide the rifle and be sitting peacefully among the hay bales. Henri spent 4 days preparing his position. He moved hay bales to create a narrow shooting lane facing southwest toward the crossroad. He calculated distances. The crossroad was 240 meters away. The farmhouse used by German officers was 290 meters. The barn where vehicles were maintained was 180 meters. He tested the rifle dry firing it without ammunition, worked the bolt action until his hands remembered the motion, practiced his breathing, his trigger squeeze, the fundamentals his uncle had taught him 45 years earlier. On July 20th, Henri took his first shot. The target was a German lieutenant standing near the crossroad at 0730 hours, approximately 240 meters from Henry's position. The officer was consulting a map, standing still, presenting a stationary target. Henri aimed for center mass. Squeezed the trigger. The label kicked against his shoulder. The 8mm round traveled 240 meters in approximately 0.6 seconds. The lieutenant dropped. Henri didn't wait to confirm. He pulled the rifle back, covered it with hay, and sat down 3 meters from the firing position. His hands were shaking. His heart hammered. He'd just killed a man. Below, Germans shouted. Soldiers ran toward the fallen officer. They searched for the shooter, checked windows, looked toward the tree line 400 meters east, never looked at the hayloft. The lieutenant died before a medic reached him. The Germans conducted a search of the area, found nothing, concluded the shot came from the forest, sent a patrol to investigate. Henri sat in his loft and realized something profound. The Germans didn't expect farmers to fight back. They expected resistance fighters, young men with weapons, operating from forests and basements. They didn't expect a 62-year-old man shooting from a hayloft on his own property. That blindness would kill them. Over the next 3 weeks, Henri developed a system. He never shot on consecutive days. Never shot at the same time twice. Never shot from the same position in the loft. He moved his firing position every time, creating multiple shooting lanes through the hay bales. He learned to judge wind by watching smoke from German cooking fires. Learned to estimate range by measuring distances with his eyes, using fence posts and buildings as references. Learned to wait for the right targets. Henri didn't shoot ordinary soldiers. He shot officers. Officers wore better uniforms, carried themselves differently, received salutes. Officers were identifiable at distance. More importantly, officers were valuable. Killing an enlisted man disrupted a squad. Killing an officer disrupted an entire unit. His second kill came on July 24th. A captain standing near a staff car at 270 meters. Clean shot through the chest. The captain fell. Germans scattered. Searched the area. Found nothing. Third kill, July 27th. A major walking across the village square at 0615 hours. Range 310 meters. The major was moving, which made the shot difficult. Henri led him by half a meter, squeezed the trigger. The major stumbled and fell. Germans returned fire blindly toward the tree line. Never looked at the hayloft. Fourth kill, August 1st. Another lieutenant at the crossroad. Range 240 meters. The pattern repeated. Shot fired. Officer down. Germans searching. No results. By mid-August, German units in the area were reporting a sniper problem. Officers were being killed at random intervals. No pattern to the attacks. No witnesses. No muzzle flash sightings. The sniper seemed to vanish after each shot. German response was predictable. They increased patrols, posted sentries, ordered officers to move quickly between positions, never stand in the open. These measures helped slightly. Moving targets were harder to hit, but officers still needed to conduct business. They still needed to consult maps, inspect troops, coordinate logistics. Those moments created opportunities. Henry's fifth kill came on August 6, a Hauptmann inspecting a vehicle convoy at 0745 hours. Range 285 meters. The Hauptmann fell. This time, Germans organized a systematic search. They checked every building within 400 meters of the shooting location. They entered Henry's barn, walked through the ground floor, searched the cattle stalls. They never climbed a ladder to the hayloft. Henry was sitting 2 meters from a hidden rifle, eating bread, when 2 German soldiers looked up from below. One soldier called up in broken French, asked if Henry had seen anything. Henry said no. The soldier left. That evening, Henry moved a rifle to a different hiding spot, buried it in hay at the opposite end of the loft. If they searched again, they'd find nothing near the firing positions. By August 15th, Henry had killed 9 German officers. The Wehrmacht response escalated. They brought in a counter-sniper team, 3 men with scope rifles and training in sniper suppression. The team set up observation posts covering likely firing positions. They watched the tree line, watched empty buildings, watched fields. They never watched a hayloft where an old farmer stored hay. Henry killed the team leader on August 19th. The German sniper was positioned in a window 380 meters away, scanning with binoculars. Henry saw the glint of the optics, waited for the sniper to lower the binoculars, fired. The 8mm round hit the sniper in the throat. The other 2 counter-snipers spent 3 days searching for Henry's position. Never found it. Can one elderly farmer with a World War I rifle kill 29 German officers? Please like this video to see how this turns out. Subscribe for more stories, and let's continue back to Henry. The psychological impact on German units was severe. Officers became paranoid. They moved at night when possible, wore enlisted men's uniforms to disguise their rank, traveled in closed vehicles with curtains over the windows. Command meetings were held in basements with guards posted outside. These precautions reduced Henry's opportunities but didn't eliminate them. Officers still needed to function. They still emerged from buildings, still walked to vehicles, still presented targets. Henry's ammunition supply was dwindling. He'd started with 47 rounds. Each kill required 1 shot. He never fired twice at the same target. 1 shot, 1 kill, then hide. By late August, he had 22 rounds remaining. He made each shot count. 10th kill, August 23rd. An Oberleutnant walking to a staff car. Range 265 meters. Clean hit. 11th kill, August 26th. A Hauptmann standing near a radio truck. Range 295 meters. The Hauptmann was talking on a field telephone when Henry's round hit him in the chest. 12th kill, August 29th. A major exiting the farmhouse used as headquarters. Range 290 meters. The major took 3 steps before Henry fired. Never took a 4th. By September 1st, Henry had 19 rounds left and 12 confirmed kills. German units in the area were rotating frequently as Allied forces advanced from Normandy. New officers arrived constantly, unaware of the sniper threat until briefed. Those briefings emphasized the danger but couldn't pinpoint the source. German intelligence analyzed the shooting incidents. They mapped the kill locations, calculated probable firing positions. Their analysis identified several likely sniper hides: the church bell tower, abandoned houses at the village edge, a barn 400 meters east. They searched all of them, found nothing. Henry's loft wasn't on their list. It was too close to German positions. Too obvious. No trained sniper would operate from such an exposed location. But Henri wasn't a trained sniper. He was a farmer who knew his land, knew the sight lines, knew where Germans stood and walked, knew that sometimes the best hiding place was right under the enemy's nose. On September 5th, Henri killed 2 officers in one day. The first was a captain at 0630 hours, range 255 meters. The second was a lieutenant at 1,545 hours, range 280 meters. 2 different positions in the loft. 2 different firing lanes through the hay bales. Germans searched frantically after each shooting. Never connected the attacks to the same location. 14th and 15th kills. 15 officers dead. Henri had 17 rounds remaining. The German garrison in Maris was preparing to withdraw. Allied forces were pushing east from Normandy. The front line was collapsing. Wehrmacht units were conducting fighting retreats, trying to establish defensive lines closer to the German border. Officers in the area knew they'd be pulling out soon. They just needed to survive a few more weeks. Henri didn't give them those weeks. 16th kill, September 8th. A Hauptmann coordinating a convoy departure. Range 270 meters. The Hauptmann was standing next to a truck when Henry's round hit him in the head. 17th kill, September 10th. An Oberleutnant inspecting sentries. Range 240 meters. Clean shot through the upper chest. 18th kill, September 13th. A major who'd arrived the previous day. Range 315 meters. The major was walking across open ground, moving fast. Henri led him by nearly a meter. The round caught the major mid-stride. By mid-September, the German High Command was aware of the sniper operating in the Maris area. Reports described an exceptionally skilled shooter, possibly a French resistance operative with military training. The sniper had killed 18 officers in 9 weeks. Survival rate for German officers in the area had dropped significantly. Some officers refused assignments to units operating near Maris. The Germans never suspected a 62-year-old farmer. Henry's wife, Marie, visited him twice in early September, brought food, clean clothes. She didn't know what Henri was doing. He told her he was staying in a loft to protect the property from looters. Marie believed him, or pretended to. The distinction didn't matter. On September 15th, Henri killed his 19th officer, a captain at the crossroad, range 245 meters. The captain was studying a map, presenting a perfect target. Henry's shot was textbook, center mass. The captain collapsed instantly. This time, the German response was different. An SS unit arrived in Maris that afternoon. 30 men under command of an SS Hauptsturmführer named Werner Vogel. Vogel's specialty was partisan suppression. He'd operated in occupied Poland, then Yugoslavia, hunting resistance fighters. His methods were brutal and effective. Vogel's assessment was immediate. The sniper was local. The shooting pattern indicated someone with intimate knowledge of the area. The sniper wasn't moving between distant positions. All shots originated from a relatively small area. That meant a fixed position, probably within 400 meters of the kill zone. Vogel ordered a building-by-building search. Every structure within 500 meters of the crossroad would be examined. Every room, every basement, every attic, every place a sniper might hide. The search began on September 16th at dawn. 40 German soldiers, including Vogel's SS unit, moved systematically through the village. They searched the church, the school, 7 farmhouses, 2 barns, a grain storage building. They reached Henry's property on September 17th at 1,030 hours. Henri watched them coming. 8 soldiers approaching his barn. He was sitting in the loft with the label hidden beneath hay 4 meters away. His ammunition pouch held 13 rounds. If they found the rifle, he was dead. If they climbed the ladder and searched the loft thoroughly, they'd find it. The soldiers entered the ground floor. Henri could hear them below, talking in German, moving equipment, checking the cattle stalls. Footsteps on the wooden floor. The sound of doors opening and closing. Then he heard boots on the ladder. A soldier climbed to the loft opening, looked around, saw an old man sitting on hay bales, eating an apple. The soldier asked in German if Henri lived here. Henri replied in French that he stored hay here. The soldier's French was poor. He gestured at the hay, asked if Henri had seen anyone else in the loft. Henri said no. The soldier's eyes scanned the loft. Hay bales stacked everywhere, narrow paths between them, hundreds of places to hide something. The soldier would need an hour to search properly. He had 7 other buildings to check today. The soldier descended the ladder without searching further. Henri sat motionless for 20 minutes after the Germans left. His hands weren't shaking. His heart rate was normal. He'd discovered something about himself over the past 9 weeks. He could function under pressure. Fear didn't paralyze him anymore. Danger focused him. He waited until 1400 hours. Then he prepared his rifle for shot number 20. The target was SS Hauptsturmführer Werner Vogel. Vogel was standing near his staff car at 1,425 hours, talking to subordinates. Range from Henry's loft, 305 meters. Vogel was wearing his SS uniform, distinctive enough to identify at distance. He was animated, gesturing as he spoke, presenting a moving target. Henri watched him through a gap in the hay bales, studied his movements. Vogel would gesture, then pause. Gesture, then pause. The pattern repeated. In those pauses, Vogel was relatively still for approximately 2 seconds. Henri waited for the next pause. Vogel stopped moving. Henri exhaled halfway, held his breath, squeezed the trigger. The Lebel fired. The 8mm round traveled 305 meters, hit Vogel in the upper chest, just below the collarbone. Vogel fell backward against the staff car, slid to the ground. His subordinates dove for cover. 20 officers dead, 12 rounds remaining. The SS response was immediate and overwhelming. Every soldier in the area converged on the village. They set up a perimeter. No one in or out. They dragged civilians from their homes, lined them up in the square. Vogel had been a high-value target. His death demanded retribution. The SS began interrogating villagers. Where was the sniper? Who was helping him? Who had seen anything? The interrogations were violent. 2 men were beaten unconscious. A woman was threatened with execution. No one talked, not because they were protecting Henri. Most genuinely didn't know who was doing the shooting. The Germans announced collective punishment. They would execute 10 villagers unless the sniper was identified within 24 hours. Henri listened to the announcement from his loft. He could see Germans herding villagers into the square below, could see soldiers positioning machine guns. The threat was real. The Germans would kill 10 people to flush him out. Henri had a choice: surrender and save the villagers, or stay hidden and let innocent people die. He chose a third option. At 1800 hours, as the sun lowered toward the horizon, Henri positioned himself at the loft window. Below, Germans were guarding the villagers in the square. Range, 285 meters. Henri counted 8 soldiers in view, several officers directing operations. He picked the highest-ranking officer visible, an SS Obersturmführer standing near a command vehicle. Henri aimed, fired. The officer dropped. Germans scattered. Machine guns opened fire toward the tree line. Tracers arced into the darkening sky. They were shooting at ghosts. Henri moved to a different position in the loft. Waited 10 minutes. The Germans regrouped. Another officer emerged from cover to coordinate the response. Henri shot him. Officer number 22. 10 minutes later, a third officer made the mistake of standing in the open. Henri shot him too. 23. The pattern was clear now. The sniper was targeting officers specifically. The response to Vogel's death had drawn multiple officers into the area. They were targets of opportunity. By 1930 hours, with darkness falling, the Germans withdrew the villagers to a barn under guard. Conducting operations in the open was suicide. The sniper had demonstrated he could hit targets at will. Officers stopped exposing themselves. Henri had 4 rounds remaining. That night, German units began withdrawing from Maris. The front line was collapsing faster than expected. Allied forces were advancing rapidly. Staying to hunt one sniper wasn't worth risking an entire unit being cut off and captured. The Wehrmacht needed every soldier for the defensive lines being established to the east. By morning on September 18th, most German forces had pulled out. A rear guard remained, approximately 40 soldiers covering the withdrawal. Henri killed 2 more officers before the rear guard departed. Both shots at ranges exceeding 300 meters. Both clean kills. 25 German officers dead. 2 rounds remaining. On September 19th, Allied forces reached Maris. A British reconnaissance unit entered the village at 1,100 hours. They found it largely intact. No major fighting had occurred. The Germans had withdrawn without resistance. Henri climbed down from his loft for the first time in 3 days. He walked into the village square, carrying his rifle openly. British soldiers saw him, an elderly French farmer with an ancient label. A lieutenant approached, speaking broken French, asked if Henri was with the resistance. Henri said no. He was just a farmer. The lieutenant noticed a rifle, asked if Henri had used it. Henri said yes. He'd shot some Germans. How many? The lieutenant asked. 25, Henri replied. The lieutenant didn't believe him. 25 confirmed kills with a bolt-action rifle? From where? Henri pointed to his hayloft. The lieutenant looked skeptical, but radioed the information to his command. Over the next 3 days, British intelligence officers interviewed Henri extensively. They examined his firing positions in the loft, calculated sight lines, measured distances, cross-referenced Henry's account with German documents captured during the advance. The documents confirmed it. German units operating in the Maris area had reported 25 officer casualties from sniper fire between July 20th and September 19th, 1944. 25 officers killed, 0 enlisted casualties. The pattern was unprecedented. British intelligence estimated Henri had disrupted operations for 2 German infantry battalions and 1 SS unit. The psychological impact on German forces had been significant. Officer survival protocols had consumed resources and reduced operational effectiveness. Several units had requested transfer out of the area. 1 farmer, 1 rifle, 25 kills. But Henri wasn't finished. On September 23rd, remnants of the German rear guard were still operating 12 kilometers south, conducting delaying actions against advancing Allied forces. British intelligence learned that a German company headquarters had been established in Vieux-Birken, a village not yet liberated. Henri volunteered to help. He knew the area, knew the sight lines, could get into position without attracting attention. British command was hesitant. Henri was a civilian, 62 years old, not under military authority, but they were short on scouts and snipers. Henri had proven himself capable. They gave him 10.8mm rounds. British armories carried ammunition for captured French weapons. Henri loaded his label, traveled south with a British patrol. They dropped him 600 meters from Vieux-Birken. Henri found an abandoned barn with a hayloft facing the German positions. The setup was similar to his farm. Good elevation, good sight lines. He positioned himself and waited. Over the next 4 days, Henri killed 4 more German officers in Vieux-Birken. The last was Hauptmann Klaus Zimmermann at 0647 hours on September 23rd. Range, 340 meters. The longest shot Henri ever attempted. He compensated for wind, compensated for distance, squeezed the trigger. Zimmermann fell. 29 officers dead. Henri climbed down from the barn, walked back to British lines, and handed his rifle to a lieutenant. He was done. Allied forces would liberate Vieux-Birken within 48 hours. The Germans were retreating into Belgium. The war in this sector was effectively over. Henri Beaumont returned his farm in Maris on September 26, 1944. He found his property intact. The Germans had abandoned their vehicles and equipment during the withdrawal. British engineers were clearing the area. Marie returned from her sister's house. Henri told her everything, what he'd done, why he'd done it. She sat quietly for a long time, then said simply that Pierre would have been proud. In December 1944, British command recommended Henri for recognition. The French government, operating from liberated Paris, awarded him the Médaille de la Résistance. The citation noted his exceptional contribution to the liberation effort and his unprecedented success against enemy officers. Henri never attended the ceremony. He sent word that he was busy with farm work. The medal was delivered to Maris by a French officer. Henri accepted it politely, then put it in a drawer. After the war, Henri gave one interview about his actions. A military historian visited in 1947, researching irregular warfare in occupied France. Henri described his methods matter-of-factly: distance estimation, wind compensation, target selection, concealment techniques. He spoke about it like discussing crop rotation or cattle breeding. Technical details. Nothing emotional. The historian asked if Henri felt guilt about the killings. Henri said no. They killed Pierre. He killed them. That was a transaction. The historian published a paper in 1949 documenting Henri's actions. The paper circulated among military academies. Henri's techniques became case studies in unconventional warfare. His success demonstrated that effective sniping didn't require military training. It required patience, knowledge of terrain, and understanding of enemy psychology. Henri never read the paper. He wasn't interested in military analysis. He was a farmer. He grew hay, raised dairy cows, lived quietly. Claude Mercier, the neighbor who provided a Lebel rifle, asked for it back in 1946. Henri returned it cleaned and oiled. Claude asked if Henri wanted to keep it. Henri said no. He'd never liked hunting. Henri Beaumont lived until 1971. He died at age 89 from heart failure, working in his fields on a summer morning. Marie found him lying in the hay, the scythe still in his hand. The funeral service was large. 200 people attended. Several were British veterans who'd fought in the area. They came to pay respects to the old farmer who'd killed 29 German officers from a hayloft. The British lieutenant who'd first interviewed Henri in 1944 attended the funeral. He was retired by then, living in London. He told Marie that Henri was the most effective irregular combatant he'd encountered during the war. Not because of training or equipment, because Henri understood something fundamental. War isn't won by the strongest fighters. It's won by those who refuse to stop fighting. The hayloft where Henri conducted his operations still stands. The farm remained in the Beaumont family until 1995, when Marie's nephew sold it. The new owners converted the barn to residential space. The loft is now a bedroom with skylights and hardwood floors. There's no plaque, no memorial. Nothing identifies a location as historically significant. Most residents of Maris don't know the story. It's not taught in local schools. Henri never wanted recognition. He wanted Germans off his property. He got that. In 2003, a military museum in Lille requested Henri's Lebel rifle for an exhibit on French resistance. Claude Mercier's son still owned it. He declined. His father had promised to keep the rifle in the family. That promise mattered more than museum displays. The only physical evidence of Henri's actions is a photograph taken by a British intelligence officer in September 1944. It shows Henri standing in his loft, holding the Lebel. He's not posing, not smiling, just standing there, an old farmer with a rifle. The photo is archived in the Imperial War Museum in London. File number FRA 1944-0827. Few people have seen it. That's how innovation actually happens in war, not through official channels or standard tactics, through farmers and mechanics and ordinary people who see problems, find solutions, and don't wait for permission to fight back. 29 German officers killed, 70 days of operations. One elderly farmer with a rifle his neighbor's father carried in 1916. Henri Beaumont proved that you don't need youth or training or sophisticated equipment to be effective. You need motivation. You need patience. You need to understand your battlefield better than the enemy does. If stories like this remind you why we preserve history, hit that like button, subscribe for more forgotten heroes, and turn on that notification bell so you never miss these stories. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.